Yesterday, we discussed the fact that the Reds are, they're being linked to Teoscar Hernandez. Obviously, we talked a lot about, some of the other big names that the Reds have been in on when it comes to whether free agency or through trades. So at the end of the day, like, we've gone from this stage where we were excited initially to hear how active the Reds have been in some of these trade discussions or in free agency. But now we're getting to the point to where at some point you can't just be in on these guys. You have to land one of them to be able to really get fans to truly believe that you're serious about taking this team to that next level. And all I said on yesterday's show was the only thing I did not want is I just don't want to be worked. I would much rather the Reds not be linked to anybody than to just be throwing your name in the hat just to show fans just to trick fans into pretending that you're actually making an effort to get these guys. And the reason I said that, you could go in after Teoscar Hernandez, but why waste the time and resources if you know that there's no chance in hell that you're going to be able to financially offer him a contract? And the reason I bring that up, when I saw the fact that the Yankees and the Dodgers and the Blue Jays and the Red Sox, that they're all in on Teoscar Hernandez, it was just kind of one of those things where I'm like, maybe I'm being too negative here, but just stop, Reds. You're not going to outbid those teams. So stop putting it out there for us fans to get excited about something that there's a 0% chance of happening. I actually did believe, when they were looking to get Garrett from the White Sox not too long ago, that one I truly believe they had a legitimate shot at doing, because although they lack the financial means to be able to compete with the Dodgers, Yankees, and other teams in the free agent market, they have the prospect means to be able to compete with any team in baseball when it comes to landing a name in a big trade. So that's why I was more confident about the Reds targeting the pitcher from the White Sox not too long ago more than I am about Teoscar Hernandez. But last night we got a chance to hear from Nick Krall, president of baseball operations, when he sat down with Tommy Thrall and, of course, Mark Sheldon, MLB.com, on the Reds Hot Stove League show. Here's a clip we shared on Chatterbox Sports on Twitter and X last night regarding the conversation between Sheldon and Nick Krall about the Reds offseason thus far. Take a listen. There's one interesting thing he says about the Reds and how they're trying to target guys through trades and some of the roadblocks they're running into. Here's Nick Krall last night on the Reds Hot Stove League show.
Nick, you guys made a trade last month with Jonathan India going to Kansas City for Brady Singer. Are you close to making any more moves? It seems like it's been a little quiet, not just around here, but around the industry, with the exception of the Cubs lately. What are you kind of close to, or what are you seeing right now in the landscape?
Yeah, we came out of the chute and we offered Nick Martinez a qualifying offer. He accepted it. We made a trade with the Royals with Brady Singer and Jonathan India, and we looked at that and we feel really good about where our pitching staff is. I think you can always add more pitching. You can always get better. We've had a lot of conversations over the last few weeks just to bolster our position player group. But right now we haven't gotten anything and haven't made a ton of progress at this point. But I think we've had a lot of conversations. We know what the landscape looks like, and it's just trying to figure out how to make a deal to. Whether it's a free agent or a trade that can help this club.
What has been the difficulty in closing a deal, either for a trade or a free agent?
I think there's been a lot of conversations about from a trade market. A lot of people are looking for major league pieces back, and when you're doing that, I can make a trade and fill a hole, but when I fill a hole, I open up another one. So it's just, do you have a way to backfill that? I think that's been a little bit of trouble with. That's been the challenge, I guess, trying to fill those holes. And then free agency, it's all about, do you want to come here, and then what's the money, and do you match up?
Again, that was Nick Krall, president of baseball operations, with Mark Sheldon last night on the Reds Hot Stove League show. I agree with him. I think that's what the market has basically been set in regards to. The trade market has basically dictated that a lot of the teams that are willing to move on from guys, they're looking to get Major League Baseball ready players now. They're not interested in prospects this go round. If it was a prospect heavy market this offseason, the Reds could be in on any name that they truly wanted. But because the trade market has dictated the fact that all these teams, they want MLB ready talent now, outside of Jonathan India, there really was no other name that they could realistically move on from. And be in a position where they could make that happen. So I thought that was an interesting takeaway from Nick Krall last night. And if that is the case at this point, I think there is 0 point in getting excited about a big potential move for the Reds, because it sounds like that potential move doesn't exist, at least as we sit here in mid-December.
Yeah, that seemed to me like he was checking off boxes. And it kind of seems
we got to be interested in X number of players type of thing.
Yeah, like it almost seems. You remember when the Reds made that terrible trade for Mike Minor? Yeah. And it was like,
the innings eater.
See, we're trying to win. We get Mike Minor. But nobody wants Mike Minor, and he's old and he stinks. This seems to me like he's like, all right, we made the Jonathan India trade. You guys love that. We brought back Nick Martinez. You guys love that. So I think we're good, right? You guys love those two moves. I think we're fine. We don't need to do any more. That's what that conversation kind of seemed like to me, that clip there. I would be thoroughly disappointed if the Cincinnati Reds are unable to sign at least one or trade for one veteran outfielder who knows what they're doing with a baseball bat, can hit home runs, and can be efficient every single day. I would be pretty disappointed. They're going to sign somebody, but I fear it's going to be the Jesse Winker type of deal. And I don't have anything against Jesse Winker. It's just I don't want more of the same.
Yeah.
And it's that half-hearted approach that the Reds have had for so long. We throw the phrase "all in" around like it's candy on this show, and everybody else does it. We're not the only ones that do it. But truly, there has to be a point when the Reds go all in. I don't know if it's this year. It has to be next year. We have to have a plan. You get 4 years max, 3 years with Terry Francona. You have to capitalize on this. And coming into this season with pretty much most of the same roster, not a whole lot of changes. And Krall said before this offseason, or at least during the offseason, that they need outfield help. They need more help in the outfield. And they haven't addressed that yet. So I don't know when that's going to come, but clearly it's evident that there is nothing close. There's nothing on the way. There's nothing in a conversation right now, serious conversation involving any sort of outfielder. They have to do something, and I'd imagine we're going to see at least one more move, but I don't know if it's going to be the move that I expected after the Jonathan India trade and probably what most of the fan base expected.
Yeah, I think this is kind of exhale, Reds fans. Don't hold your breath through the rest of the offseason expecting a big move because it's not coming anytime soon. I think that kind of stinks, but when we talked about yesterday the names associated with Teoscar Hernandez with the Reds, we kind of made this assumption as well. It just hurts a little bit more to hear it from Nick Krall. But I would imagine when the Reds, the Yankees, the Phillies, the Dodgers are on the line for a player, the Reds aren't giving a competitive offer. I don't think that's necessarily a shock to many people. It does just stink to hear your GM say that out loud. But yeah, I think the Reds' path to adding the talent they need to add to be a legitimate contender next year has always been through trade. I think that's always been the most feasible route for them to add a player that can really raise the expectations of this team, because I just don't think with the way contracts are going, they can be competitive in the open market of free agency. So they're going to have to be willing to mortgage prospects, and when that happens, you have to have more conversations about when to go all in, because obviously there's a little bit more risk that comes with the trades than if you're just putting money on the table with free agency signings. So that could be a hard part too. If there's not a lot of trade options out there, then they're asking for more prospects. Do you want to make that kind of move to go into this season? I don't know how they sit with that. And as we've talked about with this offseason, for sure, the loss of the TV deal and the loss of money, does that make them more risk adverse? Are they not wanting to take big swings because you know that you have prospect depth in the organization now and you don't have money for long-term deals? I don't know. I think there's a lot of stuff at play. Obviously not the quote you want to hear from Nick Krall, but as much as it does sting to hear him say that, I don't know that it changes that much for my offseason outlook for the Reds. I think this has kind of been the general expectation for me.
So when you said, it's not the thing you want to hear, I'm a little different. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Okay. I needed to hear that because, and here's why. Like I said, my big thing is I don't like to be worked. Don't lie to me. Don't pretend to be something you're not, Cincinnati. We're working hard to get this Teoscar Hernandez done. Are you? I don't know if you are. I think it's one of those like, hey, let's just get in touch with them. Let's just, say we're interested. But we all know deep down, if it becomes a bidding war, you're not. We just know there's a 0.0% chance that the Reds are coming away with a deal like that. So rather than just continuing to do this whole charade and this song and dance of like every time a name the Reds are involved in, we get our hopes up. At least hearing him say that, we now know what to expect kind of moving forward. But no, I know what you're saying. Like, yeah, you don't want to hear that, but I at least want to hear that
Yeah,
they're
I think that's
acknowledging the fact that those roadblocks exist, and that basically saying don't get your hopes up when it's all said and done. The other point he made that I thought was a good point, whether we want to hear it or not, and I don't even think that the Reds have a lot of players on this roster that would get a big return anyways. If we're trying to hit the trade market to move MLB ready players now for other MLB ready players, who on this Reds roster outside of Jonathan India, who they've already moved on from, who else on this active roster right now for the Reds could they theoretically move to get the kind of return that we're hoping when it comes to some of the big names out there? I don't think that player or players exist, or at least exist to the level, to the value that the Reds would need to be able to get a deal done. Like, I just don't think any player on this roster right now exists to get the Reds any kind of major deal done or anything back in a major trade in return. And we all know the limitations they have in free agency. I think you're right, Elliot. At this point, the biggest move moving forward, and maybe we're wrong, but the Jesse Winker thing seems to be something that is more attainable, realistically attainable for the Reds when it's all said and done.
I think Spencer Steer could be a guy that could
Fair.
get some attention. I think Spencer Steer's a name that people want. I know that his defense isn't the greatest. He's not the best offensive player, but he plays 160 games, and he plays at every single position. Teams are interested in that. Teams see value in that, and I could see the Reds potentially trading Spencer Steer for somebody. The issue is you would then have to fill left field as well. You have to fill left field and right field at the same time. So I think there's maybe a couple names. Obviously, like. They would never do it. Tyler Stevenson's a name. People would absolutely be interested in Tyler Stevenson. They're not going to trade Tyler Stevenson, and they shouldn't. But that's another name that would warrant some significant value on the trade market. Outside of that, you're probably, though, right. Yeah, there's not a ton else that, A, you'd be willing to trade, and B, has enough juice to get a deal done.
And also to feed off his other point, you move on from Tyler Stevenson to get an outfielder. Well, now you need a catcher. So it's
Correct.
like you can't by trying to plug one hole, you create another hole by trying to get that. So then it's just like whack-a-mole. You're constantly just trying to hit at something, trying to fix a problem, and that's the other problem and predicament that the Reds run into. And when you're not a deep roster, and the Reds aren't, that creates those kind of difficulties. Spencer Steer is one that you move on from, and I'm not saying that's not a hole that you have to fill. But because he's so versatile and does a lot of different things, it's not one particular thing you have to replace. Tyler Stevenson, a catcher, that's a lot of offensive production and, of course, a very important position that they would have to replace if they did move on from him. And then, like I said, like he said, can't create more holes just to fill this hole over here. So I think we can all agree. I think last night, it's not like what Jacob said. It's not what we wanted to hear, but at least we kind of have a fair idea of what to expect moving forward. Probably let's not get our hopes up for any major splash moving forward, but let's not be negative either. The Reds got Terry Francona. They went out and got Terry Francona. They went and added another starter to this rotation of Brady Singer. They took advantage of the Jonathan India value and were able to address another need. So they added depth to pitching. They bring Nick Martinez back. Had they let him go, I wouldn't have been bummed, but I'm actually glad that they still have him on this roster from that perspective. If there's no other major splash moving forward, we can't also sit here and be negative and act as if this team didn't still have a successful offseason, even with a lot of January and February still to go.
I want the Reds to make one decent-sized move. I don't think they will, but I want it to happen so I can believe in what's happening here. I want to believe in Nick Krall. I want to believe in what he's built so far, and what he's built is something to be proud about. Ellie and Matt and Nick Lodolo and Hunter Green and all these guys coming up right now. I'm excited for Rhett Lauder. There's a lot of excitement. I just want to capitalize on it. I don't want to have another season like last year happen where you're banking on just every young player to be, A, good at baseball, and B, be healthy. I don't think that's a recipe for success. You have to sign free agents. You have to make trades. They've done a decent job at that the past couple of years. I need it to continue, though. I need more.
Yeah, I think one more move is really what we're asking for. You get one legitimate starting everyday bat in that lineup, and we feel a lot different going into the season. Not just about the success of the team, but also the direction of the front office. They're showing you that they're committed to trying to win, at least to a degree. And I just think that move's going to come from a trade, and I don't know that it's necessarily MLB guys, unless it's one of the pitchers, but you get down deep into the the rotation there. We've talked about the Chase Pettys, the Connor Phillips. I think you get a group of those prospects in and you make a move, and we have a conversation about what this team is with one more piece, and that's probably it. I think one bat is probably all we're going to add, and whether we like that or not, I think that's probably the reality of the situation. And if it's the right one, I think it can be enough to be a competitive team next year, not just in the NL Central, but maybe make a little run.
Another move that was made yesterday obviously doesn't involve the Reds, although impacts the Reds. It's within the division. The Cubs made a lot of noise, obviously, this past week when they go out and they get a Kyle Tucker. But then they turn right around and they move on from Cody Bellinger. They sent him to the Yankees. What was your reaction last night when you saw the Cubs make another major move, this time shipping off a big name off their roster?
Yeah, I don't care about that because the Yankees get whoever they want forever. They missed out on Juan Soto, and then they build a super team of players, and it makes me so upset that I can't even speak. The story from that, though, is Cody Bellinger, his wife, is Giancarlo Stanton's ex-girlfriend.
That's right.
That's the story there.
Love it.
So maybe there's going to be some sort of drama in the Yankees clubhouse. That's what I want.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the most fun part. I thought it was cool that Cubs fans were, we don't have a superstar. We need a superstar on our team. The Cubs say, all right. They go get Kyle Tucker, and they're like, we got our superstar, but we're not going to keep anyone else. So we're going to give the Yankees Bellinger for free, and we'll see where we go from there. So I thought that was kind of funny.
Let me ask you this. Would you rather have Juan Soto for $700? What does he get paid? $700?
Yeah, it's $800.
Would you rather have Juan Soto, or would you rather have Cody Bellinger, Max Fried, Devin Williams, and Christian Walker?
I said it as soon as they missed out on Soto. They're going to be better off for it.
I'd rather have the team of superstars every time. Every single day of the week and twice on Sunday. I'd rather have the rest of the bunch.
Yep, and I'm the same way, again, because if one of those guys get injured and are out for a amount of time, you got two other guys that could still carry a good load. Then you lose Soto for a long period of time. How many guys does it take to replace his production? Quite a few. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. I think that's an obvious one, nonetheless. But all right, good stuff. Justin Kenner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. I'm curious what our guy Reed thought of the Bellinger move. Have you guys talked to him? I mean,
yeah,
did that move make sense? Like,
yeah,
are we like why?
I'm glad you brought that up. Reed just texted or typed up in the chat, Cody Bellinger was going to be a bench player on the Cubs.
No, and like that's why I don't have a hot take about it. I don't have a hot take regarding that. I just was curious. Like I mean, Cody Bellinger, like you moving on from him after you add Tucker. I didn't know. It's not like I'm a Cubs aficionado to know exactly how that whole lineup will look. So I was just kind of curious his thoughts on that. So not as big a deal as what some are making it to be then.
I mean, he's a good player. I think people would want Cody Bellinger, so I'm imagining Cubs fans.
Well, I mean, if the Reds trade a player that I think's good, I immediately don't think he has a spot on the team. So it's nothing. It's the same. It's the same for everyone.
That's fair.
There are people across baseball that are like the Reds. You had Jonathan, a team that's been rebuilding for years. You have a rookie of the year in Jonathan India, and a few years later, you trade him away. For people who don't follow the Reds like we do, they're scratching their heads saying, what the hell? Why did the Reds move on from Jonathan India? And that was the reaction when that happened. Not from people within Cincinnati. And let's be clear, there's probably a good pocket of Reds fans that didn't like the Jonathan India trade. Let's just be real. But more than likely around Major League Baseball, people scratching their heads saying, why would you do that? Well, they don't really know the ins and outs of what the Reds have and what they have coming up. And it's probably the same thing with the Bellinger move with the Cubs when it's all said and done.